Welcome to Worth Your Time with your hosts from the nationally syndicated Bob and Tom Show, Kristi Lee, and the president and CEO of the Indianapolis Zoo, Dr. Rob Shumaker. Our mission to inform, entertain, and educate with guests from all aspects of life. We guarantee there isn't another podcast that features two hosts with such different backgrounds and discussions with remarkable people doing exceptional things. So let's get started. Here are your hosts, Kristi Lee and Dr. Rob Shumaker.
Well, Dr. Rob, how are you?
Kristi Lee, always glad to see you, always happy to be here. And this is an important show for us.
It is a very important show, probably one of the most important, serious topics we've ever covered on Worth Your Time.
Yeah, we've done a lot of fun things and a lot of interesting things. And I know our goal is always to be very diverse in what we present. And so I'm really proud of this topic today. I'm really glad that we're dedicating this episode and the next episode to something that I hope will result in some very positive change.
Yes, because obviously it needs to happen. And we have two wonderful guests with us. One, we're going to start with ladies first, is joining us from Pinehurst, North Carolina via Zoom. It's Dr. Ann Friesen from Human Trafficking Now. Very nice to have you with us, Dr. Ann. And we have Andrew Sveum. Is that close?
Yeah, that's very close.
And Andrew is with an organization called Freedom Rising Now. And Andrew and I were brought together by a mutual friend. And I've always said in the past that it's really hard for me to put my neck out for something because there's so many things that are put in my path. And I'm not bragging. It's just because of my job that a lot of people ask me to help or they want me to get involved in something. And if I had all the time in the world, I would love to. I just don't. But Andrew and I really hit it off, and I really felt compelled to do this podcast and to try to raise awareness for a topic that no one really wants to talk about, but is very serious, and that is human trafficking. So both of you, thank you so much for being on the show. And I guess we'll start with Anne, because she is a woman and she's right there on the Zoom, and I know her time is a little more limited. Can you just tell us a little bit about your background, Dr. Friesen, and what brought you into this topic, this foray into human trafficking?
Yes. For about 18 years, I worked with domestic violence and sexual assault victims and offered shelter and restorative programming and helping them sort of become self-sufficient and escape domestic violence and or sexual assaults. And then we found about 12 to 13 years ago that there was a intersection between sexual violence and physical violence, and human trafficking became more well known. And there was kind of a highlight about 15 years ago. Before that, people really hadn't talked much about human trafficking, but we had a global spotlight on several cases at the time, and we realized that that we had human trafficking in the States. And North Carolina, even just a few years ago, was ranked one of the top three because typically in the United States, we see a lot of human trafficking when there is a port, mountains that are around that people can travel through and sort of, be not found, or seas, that there are states that have oceans around them, or if they have a lot of highways or agriculture. And North Carolina has all of those. So we also have sporting events where people are trafficked, like golf tournaments and different things like that. So we were a top three state. And so that's my organization that I worked for at the time decided to add human trafficking to its mission. And we started helping human trafficking victims. And we helped victims from all over the country because typically they're escaping an organized crime or gang situation where they need to relocate. And so the FBI or whoever, law enforcement that were helping them, would call us to help them relocate and kind of hide before they were going to prosecute the trafficker.
So now that is on a local, more of a United States level.
Yes.
I'm going to use the word local because, Andrew, you're involved on a more international level. Can you explain your background and how you got involved?
Yeah. So how I got involved with human trafficking, combating human trafficking. I started volunteering with some child sponsorship organizations, and we traveled to several countries, and Bangladesh was one of them. And when we were going around, I was with a child sponsorship agency, and we were going around interviewing the children in the child sponsorship agency. And then the director of one of the programs had me give a talk on human trafficking in Bangladesh after watching him give a couple at these villages. And then my next trip to Bangladesh, I was invited to go a week ahead of the organization, and I stayed at Dalatia, which is the world's largest community brothel in the world. There's about 1,600 prostitutes that live there, and all of their children grow up just right there in the brothel. There's no, they don't have any access to education, any access to medical health care, just, I mean, really access to nothing. And that really changed a lot for me. That week staying at the brothel, just seeing, all these children being, you know, I mean, it's slavery. Human trafficking is just slavery. It's just a new word for it. But the average age of the girls being trafficked into Dalatia are 8 to 12 years old.
Oh,
And yeah, there's just absolutely zero protections for them. And so that's what, really, I kind of dove head first into it after that, and got involved. I was going to help the NGO out of Germany that had started these programs. I was going to start an office here in America, and to be able to raise more funds for the programs. But then unfortunately their NGO had some problems in Germany, and which led me to start Freedom Rising, my own organization, to ensure that these programs stayed funded and didn't fail, because I mean these programs are literally these only children's lifeline in this whole community. We offer daily meals, education, healthcare, mental health care. We have a home that's outside of the brothel where girls that are getting of age to be forced into their mother's line of work can, escape the brothel altogether and live there full time and get it, everything they need to be successful. And then we also have, a lot of vocational programs we're helping train the women that live there to get different jobs in beauty, like a cosmetology program or tailoring, and we're actually uh, about to build a computer lab there to help the kids have more access to educational
hmm.
opportunities, and start training some of the women in different computer skills. And we're hoping to start a welding program and an automotive program to start training the boys in different vocations as well, because the boys, they're susceptible to human trafficking as well, but then they're also, some of them grow up to be tomorrow's traffickers.
Right.
So it's just a vicious cycle of exploitation over there. And so we're kind of their one source of protection. And so that's what, led me to do what I want to do, because, or what I'm doing, because I just want to make sure that protection never goes away.
I suspect that I might be like a lot of people listening, or a lot of people in general, where I don't understand this topic at all.
Yeah.
Um, which is one of the reasons I'm really happy we're talking about it. But Dr. Friesen, I thought it was so interesting when you said North Carolina in the States is one of the top 3 states. If you had asked me, based on what I knew, I would have said, oh, California, New York, I don't know, maybe Florida,
Florida.
something, something like that. But my familiarity with the term, and and gosh, it lines up almost exactly when you said, 10, 15 years ago, it started to be used commonly, associated with the Super Bowl,
Yep.
where there would be public service, not necessarily an announcement, but postings or information, social media, about trafficking. I would say I also was at uh, a a Broadway, uh, not in New York, but a touring show, um, and it was a dated show. Human Trafficking's Thoroughly Modern Millie
Right.
was the show. Is that right? I have it
Yeah, that's right.
right.
30. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was trafficking in there as a plot theme, but not treated sincerely or not by current standards. So when you went in the restrooms, there were posters in the restrooms and so on. And, I'm sure I have that show wrong. So we'll have to check that. Um, but
You're right.
I think the point to me is my understanding was based on little little posters or little social media announcements. And then I've heard human trafficking, of course, for prostitution, but I've also heard it referred to, for example, in uh, illegal fishing industries. I've heard of it in terms of uh, garment industries in some Asian countries. A- And it seems to be used in a whole variety of ways. I don't know if my understanding of that is accurate. Can you explain the what the term really refers to? Because I think most often people think of it as women, or especially young women, and sex trafficking. Is that the right focus for this?
Yeah. Well, basically, just the general definition is when people are forced or coerced into, either working or doing something that they don't want to do, and for money. Um, so human trafficking is a 150 to 236 billion dollar industry a year, and
This is globally.
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 And about three-fourths of that comes from sex trafficking, and the rest of it comes from labor trafficking. They're both, I mean, very serious. A lot of the labor trafficking, it is on fishing boats and stuff like that. Like you said, sometimes they'll hire, they'll say, hey, we're looking for 100 people, and then they get on there, and once they get out to sea, they're like, well, you guys aren't getting paid. You guys are slaves. And, when we get to the next port, you guys are going to be sold.
And where is this?
This is pretty much all of Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia is a huge hub for human trafficking. The borders are just very porous. There's fewer protections for the people. There's a lot of poverty. Poverty and lack of protection is two of the main things that kind of lead to human trafficking. And so yeah, I mean, sex trafficking is a huge part of it. But then there's also like computer engineers are getting trafficked to places in China and Indonesia, and they're the ones that are doing all the cyber crimes against us. A lot of the people that are behind those cyber crimes are trafficking victims themselves. They went to school for computer engineering. They get hired by a fake company and then end up getting trafficked into a cyber work camp. I
I
mean,
had
there's
no idea.
Clueless.
I'd never
Completely
heard of that.
clueless about that.
Yeah, I mean,
Amazing.
there's all kinds of trafficking, unfortunately. And some of it happens in tailoring factories, some of it happens on fishing boats, some of it happens on farms. I mean, here in America, there's been a lot of like tomato farms and just places like that that have been in trouble for trafficking. I mean, chicken farms, just all kinds of, it's everywhere. And a lot of the online sex, like the sex trafficking that happens where they make online things, a lot of that comes here. And so, we're digesting a lot of that here. And so we're promoting it over there by us consuming all that media over here. And it's just, the whole industry is connected. Like the human trafficking is connected to the drug trade. So it's all connected. So combating human trafficking in Bangladesh is also, helping lower drug trafficking and helping lower things that are going wrong here. I mean, it's a global network, and it's a huge global network, and they're all working together. And so one of the big things that I'm trying to do with Freedom Rising is create more collaboration between organizations. And so I've been working with like Anne's organization. I've had several phone calls with Destiny Rescue, which they're huge in prosecution efforts in Southeast Asia, and we're partnering with them so that we can, start to raise some of the legislation and stuff like that in Bangladesh to start to create more laws and more protections to help stop the problem, because we're not going to be able to do it ourselves. We have to have the help of the government, and we have to have the help of everybody else that's over there doing the work as well.
Dr. Friesen, what kind of support do these victims do they need?
Well, let me just go back a little bit and just because I think the question was really important and Andrew did a great job answering it. But I think to really simplify for the listeners, human trafficking, there was an act that is called the Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000. And it basically said there's two types of trafficking: sex trafficking and labor trafficking. And so sex trafficking obviously is the coercion and, modern day slavery of women, particularly, but also boys and children that are forced to engage in sexual acts against their will. And then there's labor trafficking, where they have individuals coming into farms or fishing, different industries, tailor industries, whatever it may be, and they are having them work, for debt bondage or for free in poor conditions. So that is human trafficking. And so there are, two separate kind of lanes. And Andrew and I are focused on sex trafficking and
I see.
helping combat that. And, what that looks like in Bangladesh is different, but very similar to what it would be here in the States. It is a $27 million industry here in the States, and 50% of the victims are children under 14. The average age is 10 to 12-year-olds. So, it's a huge problem. And so, how we handle that is when law enforcement often gets involved. You don't hear a lot about the issues with children because, of course, their identity is not made public, and it will go through the courts a lot quieter. But it's usually helping them, provide shelter for them and a safe place where they don't have to worry about the trafficker coming, you know, to find them and to harm them anymore. And then sort of the uh, evolution of just being safe and then furthering their education, helping them be self-sufficient if they're 18, 19, 20-year olds, giving them, depending on how long they've been trafficked, sometimes they've been trafficked for years and sometimes they've only been trafficked for months. And so that trauma, we try to be very trauma informed and just sort of individualize their care. Usually it takes about 18 months on average to help a trafficking victim get on their feet, opposed to a domestic violence victim. It's more a matter of several months.
How much is the law enforcement involved in these situations? I mean, what is the laws like in Bangladesh? Are they really doing anything about this?
They're doing very little. So the age of consent is 14 in Bangladesh. And so in Dalatia, it's like I said, it's the world's largest community brothel. When our first day there, it was me, my wife, and my son, and our leader, that like our national leader that was meeting us there, got called away to a different country, and so we were just with our translators. And we went into the brothel area, and immediately me, my son, and wife got arrested, and and put in this little room while we were waiting to find out what was going to happen to us. And this is the same police station where they line children up in front of them, in front of the police station, to have them auctioned off. Like,
Oh,
as far as, they'll be like, well, I'll do it for, what amounts to $1 American. And the other person will be like, well, I'll do it for what amounts to 50 cents. I mean, it's nothing that they're getting paid. And then, 70% of that goes to their madam. And so they're just, it's like a bonded labor, and they just are never able to get out of it because I mean, people literally sell them. And if they try to run, then the police will arrest them and bring them back and say that you have to work for this person until you pay off your debt. And so the police are not doing anything. I think if we, because part of our next trip that we're going, I leave Friday for Bangladesh and Nepal, and we're going to try to do kind of a small documentary just to highlight more of the problem and show the problem and start to bring more pressure on the Bangladeshi government is what we're hoping to do. uh, because Bangladesh makes 90% of our clothing and stuff like that we get, and there used to be a huge labor trafficking problem in the tailoring factories, And when we highlighted the issue and put pressure on Bangladesh to fix the problem, or we were going to start taking our business elsewhere, they fixed the problem right away. And so I think they have the means and tools to fix the problem and to do more, but right now they just don't care. They see these community brothels as a place for the men that have bad intentions and want to do bad things to go there and do the bad things instead of in the general community. And so they see these areas as a way of preventing it from the other people. But because of the caste system and everything like that, like these girls are the women and children and everybody in these brothel areas are looked down upon, and if they do get out, like it's very hard for them to get accepted back into a society if people knew that they come from there, because they just see them as less than, and they believe it, what for whatever reason it's their fault that they were there, and it's not their fault at all.
So, Anne, I wonder if you can kind of contrast that with what we see in the States. And I was curious when you were mentioning earlier the numbers in the States, just to clarify, those are all people from within the United States or people being brought illegally into the United States, or both?
It's both. So this is not a political statement at all because, I don't think human trafficking should be politicized. It's an
Yeah.
issue that is,
Let's not make
you
the
know,
mistake that this is a political
Oh,
conversation.
no,
no, no, no, no. I just
Exactly
wanted
right.
to say that
It-
the borders,
yeah.
unfortunately, what happens is the traffickers look for vulnerable populations, and they look for people who don't have safe shelter, who don't know, they're vulnerable, they're marginalized. They might be foster children here in the States that aren't now aged out of foster care and they don't have anywhere to go. So they might be hanging out, the traffickers hang out at bus stops and they see girls that are runaways, and they have somebody in their system where it looks like a young man that might be a boyfriend, and the boy or the man, comes and starts talking to the girl, and they strike up a conversation and connect. And he poses as a boyfriend and builds trust and says, "You can come stay with me for a while." And before you know it, she's involved in being sex trafficked. We have a much more, Bangladesh is, just horrific. Just with the children having to be a part of this whole system, and seeing it and living it, and that's why what Andrew's group is just doing amazing things, helping, and I think he'll talk about that later, helping the children have time away from that and giving them some, future. But here in the States, we have a lot more sophisticated tools. And so the traffickers use video games. So children that are doing video games will start talking to somebody, and it might be a 40-year-old that says he's a 13-year-old boy, and they're gaming together, and they start talking about, where do you live, where do you go to school, and they start building trust. And he may say, I'd like to have some pictures of you, and it starts there. Then they leverage that for other acts and other videos. So they're very, very, Andrew can talk a little bit about this too, but the digital cyber issue is really horrific. And one thing that's really exciting is that just a couple weeks ago, June 27th, the United States Supreme Court, and I'm going to read this, upheld in Texas the age verification law, saying that consumers have to provide, when they're online, the age before they can get on a website that provides sexually explicit material. And that's just one thing that is wonderful, because other states can jump on this and also require that. And that's on pornography, because, young men might start looking at pornography and then they can start chatting with people. And before they know it, they have gotten into a relationship that has gone sideways. And oftentimes they will send something that they wish they didn't. And then the trafficker will say, if you don't do it, the next thing I ask you, I'm going to show your minister, I'm going to show your teacher or your parents that you sent this. And so it starts with that way. And then they also lure young women. So many stories of children that have been lured just in chatting and saying, I'm a 14-year-old boy and it's actually a 50-year-old man. Let's meet at the movie theater and, grab them, or they run away thinking that they're vulnerable. Maybe they don't have a parent at home. They're lonely. So they really take advantage of these vulnerable populations. And so when we've had a lot of folks coming in, um, our borders that don't have an emotional or secure safety net, oftentimes they are trafficked, and it's just heartbreaking.
Hey, Ann, I don't want to leave this part of the conversation without asking you for a little bit of advice. So I'm sure any parent that's listening has a kid that plays video games.
Right.
Now, the majority of video games now, it's a social enterprise for kids. They've got headphones, they've got microphones, and they're playing with their friends they know or people around the country or around the world and they've never met. So help the parents out there who are trying not to panic when they hear you talk about this cultivation through video games. Give them some advice on how to think about this.
Well, one of the things that the experts say, because one of the things I do is I'm very much a researcher, and one thing that they have shown, it makes a huge difference, and it's very simple, but it's hard for parents to do because we like to be liked and we don't like our children to be angry. But to have the simple rule of at a certain time in the evening, at 7 o'clock, we take the phones and we put them somewhere like in the parents' bedroom or somewhere, because a lot of this happens when, the children are in their bedrooms and their phone lights up and they start talking to whoever and the parents don't even know about it. So to have control, also to say, I pay for the phone. And so every once in a while, I'm going to make sure that you're safe and I'm going to look at the phone. So don't put anything in there that you would not want me to see. And I'm going to pick it up because this is a safety issue. And when you're 18, I won't do this anymore. But until then, I'm going to know the passwords and I'm going to have access to your phone. And we'll be sitting together when I look at your phone. And, don't be afraid to keep them safe, because it is a different world than it was years ago. It
Right.
is.
Yeah, there's and look, I want to be clear. I know this is a complex and challenging and very difficult issue. So I'm not pretending that there's simple answers to fixing all of this, but wow, what great advice
Mhm.
to parents that you make a minimal amount of effort and it can really save your kids. So thanks, Ann. That's great advice.
On that note,
Yep.
we're going to take a quick break and we'll come back with the second part of this and talk about things that we can do to maybe change this culture and maybe some of the things that we can do to take some steps forward and try to change what we can about this problem.
Thanks, Ann and Andrew. Great conversation.
Yes.
You've been listening to Worth Your Time with Dr. Rob Shumaker and Kristi Lee. If you like what you hear, please give a review wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to tell your friends. Word of mouth is the best compliment. Thanks to our producers, Chris Spangle of Leaders and Legends, LLC. You can reach him at leadersandlegends.net. Also, thanks to Sophie Ritz. I'm Christopher Geisen. Thanks for joining us.